Good morning, and thank you for listening. I am very excited to be here with Donnie Gibbons. Donnie is the Director of Interpreting Services over at the Learning Center for the Deaf. He also works with us on our interpretive services for our performances. We're going to talk about that today, and he does some freelancing. Welcome, Donnie.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
So that's a big title, Director of Interpreting Services. What does that mean for the rest of us?
Well, basically, I coordinate the interpreting services for a large agency, Framingham, Massachusetts, and I have 13 staff interpreters that work for me, and we provide interpreting services in a variety of different arenas: educational interpreting, professional development, administrative meetings, board meetings, things like that. So there's a whole variety of places where you might find need for sign language interpreters, and my job is to orchestrate all of that.
And you do a great job. We are very excited to be working with you, and I really enjoyed meeting with you and one of your interpreters earlier this month. And boy, I'm thrilled that we are really expanding our services for the deaf community with our full Broadway run, A Christmas Carol, and some kids shows this year. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process? I know we've talked about it before, but I bet we have some new listeners.
Yeah, definitely. This is the second season, the second year that the Hanover has made this commitment to providing a series of ASL interpreted shows, the Broadway series, as you'd mentioned. And we've had a number of requests for children's shows, so that's something brand new that we're going to be adding this year. And I believe it's a total of 10 performances that ASL interpreters have been secured, and we're going to begin advertising those shows. So it's very exciting.
It's going to be great, actually. And yes, it is 10 shows, and I'm really thrilled about the children's shows being interpreted because, boy, that fits into our mission of fostering that love and appreciation for audiences of today and tomorrow so well, because it's the young theater goers that are going to be tomorrow's theater goers.
Absolutely. We did have a handful of children that showed up last year for the Christmas Carol performance, which is a great show for all ages. And I'm sure that we're going to see a larger turnout this year for not only the children's shows, but any of the holiday shows as well.
I think so, too. And so just so that everybody knows, I did talk with Brian Burke. He's our box office manager. And so you know Donnie, too. He has reserved seats, about 20 seats in the orchestra on the far left, and the interpreter will be right there in front of the stage, right in front of where your audience will be sitting, so that it's easy to see the interpreter as well as the stage, and there shouldn't be a lot of rubbernecking back and forth. It's really all within the same sight line. I think that was really the area that had worked best based on last year's experiments.
Yeah, the need for preferred seating is rather necessary, just given the fact that this is a live ASL interpretation. You really need to be in close proximity of the interpreter, and as you had mentioned, the rubbernecking, you want, for ease of viewing, you want to be able to see the stage and the interpreter all within the same sight line. So hence the need for the reserve section in the front, and for those patrons who plan on attending, they're going to be in for a real treat. It's not all the time that you get to have, in some of the best seats in one of the best theaters. So it's just it's going to be a great experience for those people who plan on attending.
It is. And, I had the privilege of seeing an ASL interpretation of a service that I went to where there was singing. And I think that it's really important for people to note who may not necessarily need ASL services, but to understand that it's very beautiful. When people are signing to songs, there's a lot of expression that goes into that. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Sure. Well, music always poses a little bit of challenge for the ASL interpreters. Music is almost a language unto itself, and to take that message and translate it into a foreign language, say, sometimes things may get lost in translation. So we work very hard at providing a message equivalency and a visual message equivalency. So, as you mentioned, sign language is inherently beautiful to watch, the hand movements, the facial expressions, the body language, all of that really does lend itself to theater and performing arts. So we spend a lot of time going through scripts, but the majority of our rehearsal time is focused on translating the music and trying our very best to come up with an artistic equivalent.
It's an amazing process, really, and it's amazing how much work really goes into that. I don't know that people outside of the community actually realize how much preparation goes into, as you're alluding to. I mean, the interpreters, they need to see the show for themselves so that they can understand what it's all about. But with many of our shows, they're here for a weekend. So even if they come to opening night, which is Friday night, and they are interpreting the Sunday evening performance, which is how it works for our Broadway shows. For children's, it's the Sunday at 4 performance. But so all of our Broadway shows, they really have a weekend of intensive study and contemplation. So obviously they need to start well before that weekend reviewing the script and perhaps soundtracks. What else do they end up doing?
Yeah, we try to get a hold of the script as early as possible. We already know the dates of the shows and who will be the interpreting teams for each of those shows. So we work with the theater to get the scripts in hand. So often, at least a month, 2 months in advance. We definitely rely heavily on soundtracks, any kind of access to the music, whether it be on CD or MP3. We also use YouTube quite a bit, too, to see various clips of different performances and really focus on our songs and our solos and really trying to capture the spirit and intent of the storyline, the characters, the music. So a good 2 months is probably a rule of thumb in terms of total preparation time for a Broadway musical.
Right, and that brings us right to our first show that's going to kick off our Broadway series, Memphis the Musical. For people who don't know about this show, it's going to be coming to the Hanover Theater November 1st through 3rd, and it's about this very brave and courageous white radio DJ who wanted to change the world, and a black club singer who's ready for their big break, and he started playing her music in the center of the dial. This is based on a true story, so there are all sorts of great themes that are still current and relevant today, as well as great symbolism. And what's really fabulous about this particular show is the music and the dancing and the visual aspects, which is such a great opportunity for families to come and enjoy a musical. Everybody enjoying this in their own way. And it's just such a great addition, I think, to be able to offer to a family who has somebody who requires American Sign Language to come and see a show like this. Have you seen Memphis the Musical before, or will this be a first time for you?
This will be the first time for me, but from what I understand, it's a musical with a 50s theme. So the 50s style music is still quite popular today, and these themes of diversity are still relevant in everyone's lives today, and they're particularly relevant within the deaf community, being of a minority culture and a minority group trying to gain access and acceptance in the community. I think it'd be quite enjoyable for those people in the deaf community who want to come out and see it.
Why? And this is a Tony Award winner for Best Musical. So there's no joke about the quality of this show. It's going to be fabulous. And the next show in our series that people will be able to enjoy with ASL interpreting is Cirque Dreams Holidays. It came from the Kennedy Center now to the Hanover Theater. The Washington Post called it dazzling, and it's going to be visually very exciting. So this is another good example of a show. Again, it's Cirque Dreams Holidays coming November 22nd through 24th. That's the weekend before Black Friday. And because of the visual aspects to this, there's really not a lot of dialogue, which makes it even, I think, more interesting and somewhat challenging. So how does the interpreter deal with that when it's really visual, music, and a little bit of singing?
Well, the good news is we have a really great plan, and the plan is that we're not going to be doing a whole lot of interpreting. We're going to be on site. We're going to be making all the patrons feel comfortable and at home, and they'll gain access to all of the announcements. But historically, Cirque du Soleil does not have very much dialogue at all. Maybe a few words sprinkled throughout performance. But other than that, we're going to enjoy the show. And what I also know that historically, because of its visual nature, it's very, very popular in the deaf community. A great many of my deaf friends and colleagues have seen Cirque du Soleil a number of times because of that very reason. Its visual nature is just perfect for the deaf audience.
Oh, it's going to be great. But just to be clear for everybody listening, this is not Cirque du Soleil, it's Cirque Dreams. It's a Cirque style type of show, and I just need to make that I just need to make that differentiation so that people have the right expectation. But it's the same type of show. And when we've had our Cirque Dreams performances before, like Illuminations and Jungle Fantasy, very colorful, vivid, lots of acrobats. It's it's a visual explosion. The next show in our series that you'll be involved with is the 6th annual production of A Christmas Carol. And I just have to say for the record, this is another really fabulous performance. Troy Siebels does a great job with his adaptation. It's full of surprises. Again, it's so much more visual than I think anybody could imagine unless they've actually seen it before, because the sets, the backdrop, the costumes, it is all just perfect. You know, it was designed by the same people who are designing the Broadway sets, the tour sets, the costumes. So again, there's a lot of visual excitement, which sometimes people think of A Christmas Carol and they don't picture that. They picture more of a dry, dramatic reading. There's definitely some serious tones to A Christmas Carol, and there are some scary scenes, but it's a really great show. Now, you guys have been to A Christmas Carol before, obviously. Do you think that you'll have the same interpreters back this year, or do you think it'll be a
we have the same interpreting team scheduled for as we had last year with Sharon Klipstein and myself. You're right. I was able to see the show a couple of times in preparation for last year's show. We interpreted it twice, and I loved it so much each and every viewing that I had to bring my kids.
Oh, it gets better every time. It really does.
And they also enjoyed it. Yeah, it just doesn't get old. It's a classic, Charles Dickens, and it's a wonderful adaptation by Troy Siebels, indeed.
Totally. So, you know what? We need to go to a quick break. So if everybody could stay tuned, we're going to come back and we're going to talk more about what's happening in the new year, as well as our children's shows that Donnie is involved with. So stay tuned, everybody, and we'll be right back with more behind the scenes. Thanks for listening.